To our regular council meeting on March 24th, 2025. The recommendation is that the meeting be called to order. May I have a mover for that? Moved by Councillor Cressman, seconded by Councillor Dunstall. All those in favor? That carries unanimously. I'll turn it over to Councillor Martin for a territorial acknowledgement.
We've gathered in Wilmot Township on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Mississauga peoples. We also want to acknowledge the importance of the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, a peace agreement made between Indigenous nations before the Europeans arrived. It characterizes our collective responsibility to each other and Mother Earth. We should take only what we need, leave enough for others, and keep the dish clean. By acknowledging this covenant and the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, we are reminded of our important connection to this land where we live, learn, and work together as a community.
Thank you, Councillor. There are additions to the agenda, specifically a special interest delegate, and correspondence has also been added. The recommendation is that the agenda as presented as amended be approved. May I have a mover for that? Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Sadhu. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest, Councillor? Councillor Cressman?
Yes, Mayor. On 10.5 within the consent agreement or consent agenda, and 12.3 in the bylaws is the Victoria Street, Booley Street award of tender, and the engineering for that project was conducted by Walter Fady. My oldest son Garth is CEO of that firm, and so I declare a pecuniary interest.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Dunstall?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I have learned that 11.3, the official plan amendment for Burgee Court and Shepherd's Place, due to where I live, it's close, so I'm declaring a conflict. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other conflicts of pecuniary interest, councillors? Okay, seeing none, we will move along to the minutes of our previous meeting, which are the February 24th Special Council, February 24th Regular Council, and March 3rd Committee of the Whole to be adopted as presented. May I have a mover for that? Moved by Councillor Wilkinson, seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. And we do have one presentation this evening, and that is going to be from the Ninth Valley Eco Boosters, and I will invite Bart Van Andel of the Ninth Valley Eco Boosters to come up and present to Council regarding reduction of natural gas consumption. And Bart, thank you for joining us. You will have 10 minutes this evening.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Salonen, Councillors Cressman, Wilkinson, Sidhu, Dunstall, and Martin. I'm Bart Van Andel and a longtime resident of New Hamburg. Tonight I'm speaking on behalf of the Eco Boosters, Ninth Valley Eco Boosters. In 2021, Wilmot, along with all municipalities in Waterloo Region, made a pledge to reduce absolute community greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030. Next slide. Council's commitment to this pledge was a well-considered choice, but one that requires leadership along with massive community-wide action. So what's being done given councillors' public platform and voice of privilege? As you can see from the chart, from the pie chart, from Climate Action WR, which was presented to Council in June 2024, if we are to move the needle, we need to focus on the major emissions. So the largest one is transportation, primarily gasoline and diesel, which is 47.2% of the region's greenhouse gas emissions. Buildings, primarily natural gas, are 45.4% of these emissions. And the building emissions are 85 to 90% natural gas from space and water heating. And natural gas is reasonably easy to monitor on a yearly basis and in a timely fashion at a township level. because these numbers are region-wide, or that pie chart is region-wide. And I believe this is now standard practice, monitoring the township's numbers by staff. Since natural gas is one of the major emissions and is easy to track, we will focus on this for the remainder of the presentation. Next slide. So what is the situation in our township regarding natural gas consumption? This graph shows what a steady year-by-year reduction would have looked like from the base year 2010 to 2030, from roughly 20 million cubic meters to 10 million cubic meters. Next. Here, the gray line shows the actual numbers from 2010 to 2023. As you can see, we started off in the wrong direction and have flatlined since. Next. The yellow line shows the reductions now required to meet the 50 by 30 goal for natural gas. You can see it's quite steep. Next. So here we have some rough projections for new development going forward, all connected to natural gas. Next. And this is what the graph might look like if we maintain the status quo, building new neighborhoods, communities, and businesses based on natural gas. At a time when we need to be dramatically reducing our carbon emissions, they're projected to increase with future growth. We're not going to hit 50 by 30, you can see that. But that's no excuse for not doing as much as we can. It's time we need to step up. So one tool that Council has to prevent a further burdening our next generation is in Section 147 of the Municipal Act. The Act says a municipality may provide for or participate in long-term energy planning in the municipality. The interpretation reads that long-term energy planning may include energy conservation, climate change mitigation, and green energy. This is a lever given to councillors to effect long-term energy planning. The public's expectation is that the township will take responsible action to regulate dangerous situations within its jurisdiction, such as floods, fires, and public health, and to address long-term energy planning, which covers energy conservation. We owe it to our children and grandchildren to act. Our specific ask tonight is for Council to instruct staff to prepare a report within 3 months that provides options and recommendations for actions that the township can take. First, to make substantial reductions to natural gas consumption in township operations. That's often referred to as corporate emissions. Incentivize and require substantial reductions in natural gas consumption in new construction within the township. And thirdly, to encourage and assist residents and businesses to make reductions in natural gas consumption in existing buildings. I'll just mention, so the first point, the corporate emissions of township operations are typically 1 to 3% of the overall total community emissions. So you're not going to move the needle with that, but it's important, definitely important from a leadership perspective. Next. Now, what does Nith Valley Eco Boosters plan to do? In partnership with the township, we will provide educational events for homeowners describing the problem and presenting options for decreasing natural gas consumption, including switching to electric from natural gas furnaces, water heaters, and stoves, explaining grants and interest-free loans from the federal and provincial governments, which are designed to reduce a building's energy demand with better insulation, air tightness, windows, and doors. Install heat pump water heaters, and install solar panels. We're now into 2025, and many look to the future for our children with concern. None of us can make it rosy and bright, but municipal councillors have more influence than any one of us in the public. We ask that you use your jurisdiction to increase energy efficiency requirements in new and existing buildings in our community. Next. This is so important for the little people in our lives. Let's find a way. So this is a picture, oh no, previous one. This is a picture of West 5. I think a couple of you have been to West 5. It's a 70-acre new development. It's net zero. And basically this just shows, certainly the people that went, that this isn't pie in the sky. You can, it's there now. In fact, you have people in our community that know how to do these things in Wilmot Township. The people that consulted on that project to make it net zero are out of St. Jacobs. So, I mean, we know how to do it here. And then the last slide. And this is our poster for our next Myth Valley Eco Boosters educational webinar on April 1st. And that's our part in it. That's it.
Very good. Thank you very much, Bart. Councillors, are there any questions? Councillor Dunstall?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thank you, Bart. You and I had these discussions sitting in front of your home.
Yes.
When I was running. I did have a couple of questions. I just spent some time with my mother in New Brunswick, and they have a heat pump, and it was very cold. And I didn't find that it provided the heat that I would have expected. So I was hoping that you could talk about that. Also, her bill was astronomical, the electric bill. So I was wondering if you could clarify a couple of those things.
Sure. So I'm not an expert, and that seminar or the webinar on April 1st will be with someone who knows it cold. So that'd be the first thing. You can listen to that. But based on what I know, so if you're comparing cost, my understanding is that the oil heat in the eastern provinces is quite expensive as well too. So if you're comparing cost, it was a cold winter everywhere, right? So I think you'll want to kind of compare, your neighbors or whatever, what did it cost there to get a grip on whether it was reasonable or not. As far as the heat pump, yeah, I mean, it really comes down to the HVAC person that installed it. It depends on where it, I don't know whether it had electric backup or whether it had a backup and it depends on what type of heat pump it was. Some of them will work to minus 5, some to minus 10, some to minus 20, some to minus 25. Yeah, so just based on what I know there is perhaps it needs to be set up better for the really cold climate. That's really the extent of my knowledge on it, but maybe it's a depends, and you need to actually talk to a
Thank you.
proper HVAC person.
Any other questions, councillors? Okay, seeing none. Oh,
Yeah, I will just add briefly that there are a number of people actually in this room that do have switched to heat pumps and have experienced this winter, and they did notice it going up. And I'm just going by memory now, but I think in January one had a bill of, I don't know, $365 or so, which was more than what they normally would. But again, they have an electric car as well too. Yeah, their house is all electric, so, but again, that's here. And sorry, there's one other thing that I did notice something. I just did a quick search on that because you had sent an email to Dean and I was copied on it. So there's an increase of like 13% of the electrical rate, I think. I don't know if that was New Brunswick. Is she in Nova Scotia? New Brunswick, yeah. That increased 13%. I think the heat days increased by 18%. So then there's, that's I think it was like 33% increase. You can attribute just to that from a cost standpoint, but okay, that's all.
thank you again very much, Bart, for coming in and presenting on behalf of the Myth Valley Eco Boosters. This evening, we do have both general and specific interest delegations who have registered. Speakers will each have 7 minutes to address council at the appropriate time, and I'd like to remind all delegations of some guidelines for participation. For those who are joining us in person, please proceed to the podium when you're called upon to speak. If you conduct yourself in the following manners, it will result in immediate removal from the meeting, including interrupting councillors, staff, or other delegations, derogatory statements about councillors, staff, or others, turning on your camera at inappropriate times, and/or hate speech or defamatory comments. One last reminder for delegations, please do not take offense if following your presentation there are no questions from council. This is really council's time to listen and reflect upon the opinions and ideas shared with us from our community members. And although it is rare, I'd like to remind delegates and members of the public that failure to adhere to appropriate decorum may result in your microphone being muted and/or removal from the meeting. Out of respect for all meeting participants, I kindly ask those in the gallery to remain seated unless exiting the chambers and avoid personal conversations and expressions of support or opposition to those speaking in order to allow everyone to hear the proceedings as they occur. So on to our general interest delegations. Just a reminder to council that after hearing the general interest delegations, council can receive the delegation for information only or refer the matter to staff for additional information. Matters addressed during the general interest delegations are not to be debated, and only questions of clarification are permitted. And I will now invite up this evening's general interest delegate, Richard Good, to address council. Richard, thank you very much for joining us this evening, and you will have 7 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor Salone, and good evening, councillors. My name is Richard Good. I have farmed on the south side of Bleams Road, adjacent to the proposed industrial site since 1977. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that these neighboring farms along Bleams Road would be in jeopardy. I believed that agriculture held a priority status, and that should continue. After all, there were many land uses that were not permitted in Wilmot, hence the moniker, Will Not. Historically, Wilmot was very tough on any hint of development on agricultural land. Fast forward to today. This council and region are willing to expropriate almost 800 acres of industrial land and turn it into an industrial site. What happened to the priority of agriculture in that time period? I am disappointed that here we are, 1 year in, and we are still trying to get answers. I'm disappointed that the mayor and this council have hid behind NDAs and offered us very little information. I am disappointed that this council tells us it's a regional issue. And the regional council, well, they tell us talk to the province. Is it any wonder that cynicism sets in? You can go ahead, throw the region and the province under the bus. There's plenty of blame to go all around. But council, this is happening on your watch. What do you plan to do about it? I've spent my life in this township, and I want it to thrive, but not at the expense of agriculture. I have tilled this soil for many years. It's some of the best agricultural land available, and it's imperative that we protect this valuable resource. So I'd like to offer a suggestion that I believe could serve the needs of agriculture as well as industry. I believe that the chaos south of the border offers us a window of opportunity. I don't think that there will be manufacturers knocking on our door wanting to set up a large industrial site. In fact, Toyota has said they're not interested, and the electric vehicle market is stagnant at the moment. And so I ask, why would we develop a 770-acre site, make it shovel-ready, when it would sit idle for the foreseeable future while we wait and see if manufacturing will return. It's not really the kind of plan that you can take to the bank. So let's get an accurate, up-to-date inventory of the lands that are available or could be available for development. Included could be lands that may require some remediation, such as brown sites or gravel pits. It won't be as straightforward as snatching a large parcel of farmland. In fact, it may encompass 2 or 3 smaller sites, but you're not taking agricultural land. North Dumfries stated in the KW record just this past weekend that their attempts to rehabilitate gravel pits back to agricultural land has only been marginally successful. So how about an industrial use? It might be more compatible. Let's hold town hall meetings and explore ideas. The wisdom of this township is very creative. Let's be transparent. And how about we ban the use of NDAs, which have been so frustrating? We need to be able to work together. Listen to the residents of Wilmot and get this site off the table. Madam Mayor and councillors, you have some new planning powers, and maybe this is an opportunity to use them. If planning responsibility now rests with the municipality, what does that look like? Do we know? What does it mean for this proposed site? What does it mean for the countryside line? You are now empowered. New perspectives are possible. Let's work together for wise future planning. In closing, I have watched the Bleams Road Farms transition to the next generation. In fact, I have experienced it in my own situation. We have spent energy and countless hours getting a younger generation set up, and it's very gratifying to see them taking over our business. From this land on Bleams Road, they are producing a phenomenal amount of food to contribute to the local market as well as beyond. And they have boundless ideas and energy. But, and this is a big but, they are living under a very dark cloud. How do you build for the future when the land that sustains you can be taken away? Mayor and councillors, you can be responsible for lifting that dark cloud that hangs over this township. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Good. I'll remind the gallery to please refrain.
Point of order. No response, please.
Thank you, Councillor. A little more assertive than I was going for, but thank you very much, Councillor. It's appreciated. Again, thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Good. I'm assuming that there were no questions of Council? Okay. On to the correspondence. Is there any items on correspondence that anyone would like to pull? Okay, seeing none. Our consent agenda item, we do actually have one delegate on item 10.7. So I will ask for a mover and a seconder to get item 10.7 on the floor, and then I will invite up our delegate who's speaking on that matter. Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Dunstall, and I will now call on John Jukes, who is here to address council. And John, you will have 7 minutes.
Well, good evening. Greetings, Mayor and Council and staff. First time I've delegated here, I didn't realize you would have such rock star status with the attendance. Thought the room would be a little more empty than this. I'm going to be very brief. We had the Ward 4 Council meeting back whenever that was. I was running sound, and I saw behavior of some of the councillors that I was disappointed in. So, not going into any details, I felt that it should be said publicly as a citizen of the township. We need to value you as a council. I don't think many people in this room would want your job. I think it's a difficult job, and I think it calls on a great deal of character to deal with topics such as we just heard about. But I would admonish you that when in public, it would be nice to see a little more unity and support for each other. And I think you get my drift. So in one breath, I'm saying good behavior gets noticed. It makes a difference. Little things may feel like they're little things and nobody notices, but you are in a role of leadership, and that does dictate down the ladder. It dictates to us as citizens of the township. And on that note, I want to thank you for your service, and I wish you well. I know there will be an election at some point, and I'm hoping that some or all of you will at least stand to run again. Fair enough?
Thank you very much, John. Councillors, any questions of our delegate? Okay, seeing none, you weren't kidding, you kept it short, but thank you again for joining us this evening. Councillors, were there any other comments or questions? If not, I will call the vote on this item. Councillor Martin?
Through you, Mayor Salonen, I'd like to make a statement.
That's fine, I will, and I know the clerk had mentioned it to some. I think for this particular item, we'll just have, if everybody wants to make a statement, they have an opportunity, but we're not going to be debating per se on this item. But please do go ahead, Councillor.
On January 4th, 2025, along with my colleague, Councillor Dunstall, I planned a town hall meeting for the constituents of Ward 4. The purpose of this meeting was to talk about the budget proposal for our township of 51% and to give constituents an opportunity to speak to their reactions to this budget proposal. I planned on taking seriously the comments that people in the meeting made, and so in my mind, the meeting was important and would materially advance the business of the township by taking seriously the concerns of residents and help in our decision-making for the 2025 budget for our township. To say that the town hall would not materially advance the business of the township is saying we were holding a town hall and not going to take seriously any comments that people made. In our orientation as councillors, we have been informed that we need to be concerned about quorum, which would be 4 or more councillors. We regularly make decisions about not having quorum, and so that we do not run the risk of having an illegal meeting when it is not a council meeting. On January 3rd, I sent an email to council, and the email read, "Hello, Council, Greg and Caitlin. Happy New Year to everyone. I am thinking about our town hall that Lillian and I are doing tomorrow. We were speaking with Stuart, who is planning on attending. I think it would be good to not have quorum for council, so I'm hoping that we won't have over 3 people from council so that we do not have to deal with quorum. Does that make sense to people? Thank you, Stephen Martin." I understand that Councillor Sadhu and Councillor Wilkinson may have felt like I was telling them what to do. Yet my email was open and collaborative from my point of view. Since I did not hear back from anyone in my email, I did not have an option to discuss the situation apart from the large group of people gathered for the town hall. How can we collaborate in a more cooperative manner? I am open to hearing from others about this question. I want to work together with everyone. I left the town hall so as not to run the risk of having an illegal meeting. Councillor Cressman also left the meeting for that reason. I filed a complaint with the Integrity Commissioner, and as the report indicates, Councillors Wilkinson and Sadhu did not break the Code of Conduct. However, the Integrity Commissioner report highlights a problem of governance and collaboration. I do appreciate Councillors Wilkinson and Sadhu apologizing, and I accept their apology. For this reason, I'm putting forward the motion to work on updating our Code of Conduct to help us with our respectful interactions and collaboration. Does it make sense that I had to leave my own town hall meeting in order to follow the rules that we've previously agreed on?
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments, Councillors? Councillor Dunstall?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I think everything's pretty well been discussed, so I'm not going to beat a dead horse here. My concern was my constituents who felt very robbed. However, having said that, I also have to say that 6 people walked into this position In December, we took an oath in 2022. Making decisions that affect people's lives can be very stressful, and I'm not asking for any kind of kudos for that. It just is a fact. Since we've been here, we've dealt with an MZO, a gravel pit, Schneider's land transfer, of course, our budget, and the land assembly. Very stressful, and I can't imagine what that's like when you have also a full-time job and kids that you have to bring up. So having said all that, and with the point that the people in my ward are very eager to have the 6 of us work together, I would like to at this time ask Councillor Sadhu and Councillor Wilkinson if they would take my hand and shake it, and if we can start right back from the beginning where we were in December and move the business of this township forward. If the 2 of you gentlemen are willing to do that, I would love to stand up, show everybody my great outfit, and come over and shake your hand.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comment, Councillor Cressman?
Yes, through you, Mayor, the only thing I would suggest, having been on a number of boards, etc., is that we expand for new councils the opportunity to do a longer period of governance training. I always found that valuable, even though some of the things are repeated. I think the piece that I heard that day was, well, you're here as a private citizen. Once you're elected, you're never a private citizen. You can't take that hat off. Yes, you pay taxes just like everybody else, but at the end of the day, you're a councillor, you're elected, and you can't decide when you're not a councillor and when you are. And so I think some of the basic principles of good governance are crucial to any council, and it would be good to have that opportunity to go through the principles, especially at the launch of a new council.
Thank you, Councillor. Slightly deviating from what was before us, however, I can say confidently, I know that our clerk's department has been already working on training for incoming councils, and in fact, acting CAO clerk and I were discussing very similarly that this morning. So that has been noted and staff are already working on it. Any other comments? Councillor Wilkinson.
Through the chair, since we're taking the opportunity to speak on it, I did have an opportunity to respond back and offer an apology, and again, in hindsight, looking back, maybe a heat of the moment decision, but something that, yeah, in hindsight, we would do differently if over. And I welcome the guidance offered by this report, and I think it does reinforce the importance of respectful conduct and working together, and the expectation that we represent the township with professionalism at all times. So I take it very seriously and appreciate the time that the Integrity Commissioner took to report and make recommendations and observations. So I do look forward to working with my colleagues here and advancing business at council and continuing to work within the rules of our township. And that also means, continue to advocate for the citizens of Wilmot, focus on their priorities and continue to ask tough questions and challenging status quo, but ultimately looking to work together to come to the best decisions possible for everyone. So I appreciate everyone and the outcome of this.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sadhu, would you like an opportunity to speak?
Why not, right? Let's just, basically what they all said. I just want to thank the Integrity Commissioner for their thorough investigation, and like my fellow councillor Wilkinson said, heat of the moment, essentially it just comes down to we're all passionate for what we're doing. We all want to do what's best for our residents. So that's first and foremost, is we're like a family. Sometimes we disagree in his arguments, but we make up, and I'm confident that every councillor around this horseshoe is doing it for the right reasons, and we're doing it for the residents and the taxpayers. And while we might disagree, I know that is first and foremost.
Thank you, Councillor. All right, as I said, I was only giving opportunities once for speaking on this item, so I will call the vote on this particular consent agenda item. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Now, we do have multiple other items. I'm going to first remove item 10.5, as Councillor Cressman did note a conflict. This one in particular is the award of tender for Victoria Street and Bully Street reconstruction. May I have a mover for that, please? Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Martin. Questions, comments? All those in favor? That carries unanimously, and now we will do the remaining consent agenda items, which is 10.1, 10.2, 10.3, 10.4, and 10.6. May I have a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Martin, and all those in favor. And that carries unanimously. On to our reports for the evening. Our first one is 11.1, and this is the People Plan update. The recommendation is that Council direct staff to report back on corporate culture initiatives and results, and that Council direct staff to report back in Q3 with a People Plan report and 5-year plan for Council's approval. To get this on the floor, may I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Cressman, and I will invite Acting CAO and Director of Corporate Services, Greg Clark, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this report, as we discussed at Committee of the Whole, gives the background on the People Plan work that was carried out between 2022 and into early 2023. And what was presented and shared at that time at the Committee of the Whole was the sum total of the work that had been carried out by Whitesell on behalf of the township. What's been added since then at Council's request is a current org structure. So that org structure reflects the reporting relationships of everybody within the, or all the positions within the organization as they currently stand today. Some of those might be slightly different than what was seen in that last thing, and that really is a reflection of the fact that there's been almost 2 years of time and some minor tweaks. No significant changes in terms of positions are obviously included until they're approved by Council. So any new positions, any new managers, supervisors, those types of things you would see would have come through Council approval of budget in 24 or 25. The other changes would be simply reporting structures of moving staff around within departments to get better alignment of service delivery and such.
Thank you very much. Any questions, councillors? We'll go to Councillor Cressman first.
Yes, through you, Mayor, to Acting CEO Clark. Are we married to that report of 2 years ago, or are there various things on the table as a result of our commitment to, well, the Sigma Phi, whatever the first piece of that is, Six Sigma Phi or High, or anyhow, whatever that process is, if they identify things that would make the process better within the township, which trumps which? No pun intended to our American friends.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. So the org structure reflects management and CLT's view of how best to deliver services that council expects from or has dictated that be provided. So I'll take recreation as an example. So Director Catania started in 2023 and looked at his team and looked at the structure and the positions that he had available. He's made some minor changes to reporting structures to better align similar types of responsibility with similar types of positions. So supervisors having the same type of responsibility, whether they're supervisor of aquatics or supervisor of recreation. He's also taken some look at overall structure leading up to management within the recreation and parks and facilities departments to try to get better consistency and alignment of work. At the end of the day, if we were to go through a Six Sigma process, we would definitely look at what that might recommend. It could recommend different changes in positions, new positions, repurposing of positions. And at that time, it would be based on the significance of the changes, whether that would come back to council or it would be something that could be administratively implemented easily and be reported out on. But ultimately, the big thing that I want to focus on with this is that in September we'll be reporting back on the balance of Director Catania's work in going through his departments, as well as corporate services, because I only started last April, and we had started to work on it in the summer, and then things have shifted a little bit in terms of my responsibilities, and so I haven't had a ton of time to really look into the reporting structures to make sure that they make the most sense in terms of corporate services. So when you get that back in September, that will be the fulsome review of all 4 directors around the horseshoe here, our recommendations, and then from there, I think the expectation is, if we do things like Six Sigma or Lean, and it impacts staffing, we would be bringing that to council, depending on, like I say, the significance of the impact for either council approval or council reporting in some way.
Councillor Wilkinson?
So through the chair, first and foremost, appreciate Director Clark here putting together the org chart. I know that was kind of a task to be done, so I appreciate you at least updating it. My only question regarding the report back here, and some of my concern would be the money that we've already committed and spent with Witzel and Company. I guess the question from my end is, to what extent are they still involved in the finalization of this report and an assessment of the organization? And if they are no longer involved, I mean, are we looking at some sort of recovery for the work that was not completed? So just curious your thoughts on that. Is this going to be staff-driven, or is this going to be consultant-driven?
So through you, Madam Mayor, our agreement with Weitzel is complete at this point, in the sense that the work that will be completed is primarily going to be done by staff. We are potentially looking at doing another employee engagement survey, which was about $5,000 last time. So we're going to look to see if we have budget somewhere that we could, within HR, to do a survey of that nature to get an update. That might not be till 2026. In terms of Weitzel, the difference between deliverables and budget really came down to the volume of work that was required once the engagement started. So as any proposal that a consultant puts together for us, it's based on what we ask them to respond to. So we give them a set of parameters, we ask them for a scope of work, they prepare that and give us an expectation of the project. When they get into the project, many times it doesn't necessarily, you start to dig in and unearth the things that are underneath what's on the surface, and sometimes that becomes more labor intensive than expected. And I think I shared this with council in our closed session. There was some things that had to happen beyond a simple org review and org structural changes in order to move the corporation forward. And that's really where the additional funding for Weitzel went, was to get them to support us and the organization as we transition through some of those difficult decision making and difficult changes in the way that the reporting structures were set out, as well as some of the staffing changes that happened as a result of this. So in my mind, it was really a matter of a change order in terms of we went and used them in a different aspect than we'd originally intended. So I wouldn't say that they have anything owing to us. Yes, there's work incomplete, but it's not that we paid them for work that they didn't do. We paid them for work that they did that was outside of what was originally intended within the tender and document that we put forward.
Okay. Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Martin?
Through you, Mayor Salonen, I just wanted to make a commendation. I think this is a good report, and I like the organizational structure, so I appreciate the work that you've been doing on this.
Any other questions or comments, councillors? Okay, seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. On to 11.2, and this recommendation is that council direct staff to develop a plan for alternative uses at the New Hamburg Community Centre based on financial implications as described in report CS-2025-02. To get this on the floor, may I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Sadhu, and I will invite our Director of Community Services, Chris Catania, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report from the Committee of the Whole has some preliminary tasks undertaken to advance the New Hamburg Arena reconstruction project. These tasks encompass the collection and analysis of feedback received from all stakeholders as well as regulatory agencies following the review of the initial concept design. The insights gathered have led to the current schematic designs. The financial implications of the proceeding, however, is not viable at this time, and that long-term for additional investment is required beyond the scope of work. The Township can continue its current role in supporting and the delivery of recreation, culture, and events for the community at the New Hamburg Arena with no impact to existing users. As such, staff will continue to pursue grant opportunities that are scoped appropriately to make the New Hamburg Arena a continued viable space for year-round warm floor activity. This option would address indoor floor space and as a performing arts facility potentially is required. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Director Catania. Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I was quite surprised to find out that there is roller derby going on at the New Hamburg Arena. How long has that been going on? And I do remember quite a few years ago, roller skating was a good activity that people used to do. Have we ever considered, if it's already being used for roller derby, have we ever considered having roller skating there as an option for people to do?
Through you, Mayor Salmon, to Councillor Dunsell, we will consider all kinds of activities, even if it's just recreational roller skating. I think with roller skating these days, it's not too popular, but potentially having some roller derby that's been in place for decades, sure, we would definitely look into that if it's warranted.
Any other questions or comments, councillors? Councillor Cressman.
Yes, through you, Mayor, to Director Catania. Given some discussions with the former minister, I don't think did he get reappointed to that ministry? Minister Lumsden, is he? But there was a request at Roma that the granting mechanism for small municipalities should be different than larger municipalities. Now, granted, what North Dumfries received for their arena expand doesn't encourage me that there is any money at the end of the rainbow, but at least, I don't know, we want to slam the door completely on the previous. I agree with the decision that was made. At this point in time, we can't move forward. But whether there's a faint hope clause somewhere hanging around, so I guess that's where I would leave it if there's any other granting opportunities that we can hang our hat on.
Over to Director Catania.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Cressman, I wouldn't say the door's closed. When we do have a schematic design that's in place, we are proven to our different partners, whether it's the federal government or provincial government, that we're ready to look at some reinvestment in our infrastructure. So we do have plans that we can show them. We show, the need that's there for the community, and if there's any grants that come open, then we will be aggressive on those.
Any other questions or comments, councillors? Councillor Wilkinson.
Through the chair, I would just concur with what Councillor Cressman was getting at here, and happy to hear that Director Catania will go after any additional grant funding. I mean, hope maybe there's a chance that the province would be willing to reconsider some of the pieces required of the grant funding and maybe revisit it. But anyway, there's a hope.
And just to confirm, Councillor Cressman, yes, it is still Minister Lumsden. I did get a thumbs up that they are still in that position. And just on the note of hope, with just coming out of an election and headed into a new one, usually we do see grants pop up around that time. So I know that staff will continue to keep an eye out should any opportunities arise there. Any other comments or questions on this, councillors? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, and that carries unanimously. On to item 11.3. Councillor Dunstall is noting a conflict on this. We do have the recommendation. I'm not going to read it because it's rather long, but this is pertaining to the official plan amendment application 02-24 and zone change application 03-24 of 59 Burgie Court and 12 Shepherd Place, New Hamburg. To get this on the floor, may I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Cressman, seconded by Councillor Wilkinson. And I will invite our Manager of Planning and Economic Development, Andrew Martin, to introduce this report.
Thank you, Mayor Salonen. So this application was considered at the March 3rd Committee of the Whole meeting. We went into detailed discussions at that meeting, and the outcome of that was a direction from Council to provide to obtain additional information from the consultant about the opportunity to include an internal sidewalk within the development. Staff prepared a memo to Council that included that diagram. It did not result in the change of units proposed. It did result in a change in the setback between the internal and external townhome blocks. So there's a minor change in the recommendation that was considered at the March 3rd meeting. But they have demonstrated that certainly there is the opportunity for an internal sidewalk. Staff would deal with the implications of that in design should the zoning be approved through a site plan approval process. But certainly for Council's purposes, the applicant has demonstrated the inclusion is possible.
Thank you very much, Manager Martin. We do have 2 delegates, which I will get to after, but before that, are there any technical questions of Manager Martin? Okay, I did just want to clarify, Manager Martin, where are we on the timeline in terms of Council needing to approve this and not stalling any of the provincial deadlines?
So that time frame is already open for appeal. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, as I mentioned, we do have 2 registered delegations for this item. Our first delegate is Mary Lou Tanner of NPG Planning Solutions. Mary Lou, thank you very much for coming to Council this evening, and you will have 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mayor Sullivan and members of Council. I'm here just simply to say we did do the design update, as Mr. Martin indicated. We have provided the sidewalk to connect from Burgie Court on the east side to the southern limits of the homes, and then connecting from one parking area to another along the most southerly block of townhouses. It did result in that most southerly block moving back that 1.2 meters of the sidewalk. We will do our best through the site plan process to widen that sidewalk to get it beyond 1.2 meters. 1.2 meters is 4 feet, so 2 people can reasonably walk comfortably side by side, which was the goal. We recognize the changes to the zoning bylaw, and we just ask that you support those changes, and we're happy to move forward with you. With that, that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mary Lou. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Wilkinson?
Thank you, through the chair. Given that this proposal has essentially met criteria based on planning requirements and standards, as we move forward, I mean, there still is some substantial concern about the direct neighbors, or with the direct neighbors, regarding the design and the layout of this. Is your client willing to work with them through the site plan process to maybe make further enhancements to address some of their concerns moving forward?
Through Mayor Sullivan, yes. We would be happy to have those conversations with the neighbors.
Through the chair, as a follow-up, would they be willing to host potential meetings with them that could be a little bit more formalized or advertised in advance?
Unfortunately, Mr. Langlois is not here this evening. I'd have to speak to him about it. I know through the zoning and official plan amendment process, he did have multiple meetings with neighbors and neighbor representatives. So it's certainly something we're open to, but I would have to follow up with him and get back to you.
Any other questions, councillors, for our delegate? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much, Mary Lou, for joining us this evening. And we have one more registered delegation on this item, and that is Ryan Scott. Ryan, thank you very much for joining us this evening, and you will have 7 minutes.
All right, thank you. This should be the last time that I probably speak before you on this matter. So, as you may recall, this is the 3rd time that we've been, conversing on this item. A letter was prepared and circulated to council today from the planner that we had retained as a neighborhood. And, it's my opportunity to read it aloud today, which is great. But before I get into that, I just wanted to touch on a few items of my own. At the March 3rd meeting, it was raised on, a clarification on how many in the neighborhood were actually, was this movement? How many people are actually against this proposal by the applicant at this time? And that's 37. So it's a much higher number, I think, than maybe some might have thought, but it's about 95% of the neighborhood against the current proposed application. That's not saying that we're against the development in a whole. It's just saying this, as proposed, doesn't meet some of our concerns. And, those have been raised through various mediums, emails, conversations, and we do appreciate that you all have been very forthcoming and been able to get back to all of us with comments, concerns, even meeting with us, so we do appreciate that. On September 9th or prior to, we had about 50 pages of comments that we circulated and that were included in all the packages. And we had seen, up until now, there was maybe one amendment that really kind of touched on, and there was some changes to some driveway sizes on the 12 Shepherd property. Also on the September 9th meeting, Mr. Okrafka actually had confirmed that he would facilitate a meeting between the neighborhood committee, the applicant, and planning staff. It hasn't happened yet, but perhaps with council's endorsement now would be an appropriate time. In terms of what we're looking for is a 1-month deferral to allow us to have that meeting, and it sounded like, at least in principle, there is some openness to having that conversation, finally putting this to bed, and hopefully move ahead with a development that we can all live with. So with that, we've seen the great scrutiny that council did with the budget, and we do really much appreciate that. And so what we're looking for today is the same scrutiny and support. And so I will now move on to the actual letter. So, good evening. Following the Committee of the Whole meeting on March 3rd, we wish to provide additional input regarding the proposed townhouse development at Shepherd Place and Bergie Court. There are currently 37 residents of Shepherd Place, and none support the proposal due to concerns with density and neighborhood character. We respectfully request a 1-month deferral to explore the potential for single detached homes along Shepherd Place to maintain the established streetscape. This is the final opportunity for public input, as there is no engagement required at the site plan stage. We acknowledge the applicant has revised the concept plan to include internal sidewalks, which is appreciated. However, no new amenity space has been added. We also formally request that council include in its resolution a requirement for the applicant to submit an urban design brief as part of the complete site plan application. This brief should address neighborhood character, conceptual building designs, materials, and tree preservation to guide the site plan and permit process. While site plan control is no longer governs architectural elements, a design brief can help secure a higher standard of design and better integration with the existing neighborhood. Lastly, we ask the applicant to confirm this evening, if possible, that the proposed development will include enhanced design features that reflect and contribute to neighborhood character. While there is no formal appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal, council has the authority to defer this application or request meaningful revisions. We urge you to consider this path forward to ensure a more compatible and well-designed outcome. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Is there anything else that you wanted to add? I know that those were the remarks there. Okay,
No.
Great. Thank you, councillors. Are there questions at this time? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you again to you and to all the neighbors for coming out again this evening. Councillors, any additional comments, questions, amendments? Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. Through the chair. I think it's important maybe just to sort of say out loud, provide some context as to the decision that is before us and why it is difficult and why it is not always popular. And I think we see this all the time with other developments that come forward. And I mean, I'll be the first one to say, I personally am typically not in favor of higher density developments happening in areas where it doesn't necessarily fit with the existing streetscape or the existing development and character of neighborhoods. However, we are beholden to rules, given that we are a creature of the province, and there are things that we just simply cannot enforce at this level. So while it is true we could potentially turn down this development or zoning change, it would then allow the owner of the property or the proposer of the development to potentially appeal that decision, which then takes it out of council and planning at our level. Same thing would exist within the current rules set by the province, that if we defer this beyond the current timeline, same outcome could occur. It could not, but realistically, when someone has invested this much money and owns property and plans to develop it and intends to develop it and has done a lot of the work already, and it's met the requirements set out by the province, met the requirements set out by the township, I would say it's logical to assume that they would likely spend the money to defend their position and look at appealing a deferral or a turn down by the township. The position that it potentially puts the township in is that we would have to hire legal and planning experts to defend that position. And everyone is certainly well aware, I assume if you're in this room right now, you're well aware of the budget constraints that we face and some of the budget challenges we face. The potential costs associated with an Ontario Land Tribunal hearing could range from $50,000 upwards to $500,000 and anywhere in between. That's a substantial chunk of money to potentially burden the taxpayer with when trying to defend a decision that, in all likelihood, I mean, if you look at the record at the OLT, it likely gets done in favor of the developer. The other thing that's interesting to note for the residents that are opposed to this here as well is if we were to defer or deny, if it goes to the Ontario Land Tribunal, any concessions that have already been made or won could potentially be wiped off, and it can revert back to the original proposal. So we're put in a very tough position where we have to adhere to a provincial policy statement on planning, we have to adhere to official plans, and we have to adhere to rules that are set out at a higher level of government that, quite frankly, encourages development. And there is a drive and a desire to see higher density development. Whether or not you agree with it, personally I don't, it's happening. So it puts us in a very unique situation where if I go back to my constituents right now and tell them that, you know, we're turning down higher density and it's going to potentially defend this position, it could cost the tax base $500,000. I don't want to throw that out as a scare tactic, but it could cost up to that. And there's a good chance we're going to lose. That's not exactly a great decision to be made. So I certainly sympathize with you. I understand that it will change the character of your neighborhood, but I want you to understand the decision that's before us. It's not easy. But the most logical and fact-based decision at this point is to say we've won some concessions. They're willing to continue to work with you guys headed into site plan phase, and my hope is that they will do that to potentially make some more amendments moving forward. But as it stands right now, I think you've gone about as far as you can. And it's unfortunate, but that is the decision before us. And at this point, thinking about tax dollars and thinking about logical decision-making, I will be in favor of this moving forward this evening. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments, councillors? Okay, seeing none. The one thing I would just say, as chair, I'd just be interested in possibly adding, and did confirm with the clerk, that we could potentially add, not in the bylaw part, but in the recommendation, in writing, that council endorses the continued discussion, as it seems to be both parties. I don't want to be speaking for anybody, but my interpretation was that they are open to continuing conversations in the site plan. I don't know if councillors feel that we need to formally put that in, but I would put that opportunity there. Councillor Wilkinson?
Through the chair, I would be willing to offer that up as an amendment. I guess the concern would be that I don't know if we would have to make it non-binding to a certain extent, or more so just the spirit of encouraging a meeting, simply because, again, I don't want this to be an approval with a caveat that could potentially lead to an appeal ultimately at the end of the day. Is that fair to say, or is there commentary from the planning department?
Manager Martin?
I would suggest that, general encouragement wording doesn't tie it to the requirements of the bylaw, so it's not tied to the specific decision. It's the kind of the spirit of cooperation that council is trying to seek, and I think that direction is appropriate.
Councillor Wilkinson?
Through the chair, could I ask the clerk for, I guess, some suggested wording there, or?
I will give the clerk a minute there.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Through you, Mayor Salonen, that council encourages staff to continue to engage with the constituents during the site plan process.
Okay, so that's moved by Councillor Wilkinson. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Cressman. Comments or questions on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor? That carries unanimously. And any other comments or questions on the motion as amended? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that carries unanimously. So on to our bylaws. The recommendation is that the bylaws as attached to this agenda be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed in open council. I do want to pull item 12.3 as that's Councillor Cressman's conflict. We will dispense of that first then. So if I could have a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Wilkinson. All those in favor? That carries. And opposed? Okay, so sorry, I just want to make sure I have that recorded. You're in favor of that? Yes. Okay, so that passes unanimously for those who could vote. And now I will look for a mover and seconder for all of the remaining bylaws, which is 12.1, 12.2, 12.4, and 12.5. Moved by Councillor Cressman, seconded by Councillor Sadhu. All those in favor, and that carries unanimously. Now this evening we do have two notices of motion. The first one is 13.1, and this is Councillor Martin's notice of motion regarding natural gas consumption, and I will turn it over to Councillor Martin to introduce.
Thank you, Mayor Salonen, and through you, Mayor Salonen. This motion comes on the heels of the presentation of the Nith Valley Eco Boosters. It's looking at natural gas consumption and looking at how we can reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And so that's why I'm putting forward the motion. Do you want me to read through it, or?
I will leave that up to your discretion. I know it has been circulated to council in advance.
Yeah, so then I think, assuming that everybody's read it, I'm certainly interested in having any discussion on it, but I would move forward with this motion. I do have another comment, but shall I save that until later? Yeah, okay, so, okay.
Councillor Cressman beat me to it. I would be looking for a seconder to get this on the floor. Seconded by Councillor Cressman. Now I will open it up to any questions or comments. So I'll go to you first, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Salonen. At Roma, I was at a seminar put on by Enbridge, and even though Enbridge is the body that handles our natural gas, they actually have money for studies, and if staff are interested, if we do approve this motion, I'm happy to share my contact there at Enbridge. They work on audits, and some of the audit recommendations that they make are increasing electric use through heat pumps. And so I went up after, and actually I even raised a question during the luncheon, because I said, here you are, natural gas, but you're proposing alternate forms of energy like electricity that have lower greenhouse gas emissions. And they said, that from their point of view, they're very interested in working at reducing greenhouse gas emissions. I realize, that can be complicated. Is that really true coming from Enbridge? But that's what they said, and so I think there is a resource there that we could use in terms of the money that they have available for studies.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or comments, Councillors? Councillor Wilkinson?
Through the chair, I want to thank Councillor Martin for getting this on the floor. I did have a very productive meeting with a constituent of mine, Patty, and her counterpart, Bart. We actually met here, and we went through the report and some of the recommendations, and I want to thank them for putting it together. I think it's excellent. It draws some attention and got me reading and looking into some research as well as to some of the pieces that they had recommended. Now, I will say, there are limitations to obviously what the township has authority over in terms of, we can't outright ban, say, the installation of gas infrastructure, or, we can't necessarily dictate what the building code or building standards would be for new buildings. However, it sort of allows us or gives us an area where we can potentially develop long-term energy plans and set goals and again, look for collaborations within our community, like the Nith Valley Eco Boosters, but as well look at opportunities for us to potentially become cheerleaders and help residents, if they're interested in reducing their greenhouse gas emissions, to achieve some of these things. And certainly another area where we could look is incentivizing things. However, again, to comment, I'm sure most folks remember our budget process. We don't exactly have a ton of money to dedicate to incentivization of programs. However, with that said, I think there's ways that we could make it more accessible to residents to look at federal grants. For example, I had to be directed to a $40,000 interest-free loan that you can get through the federal government. I was unaware. So these are things that if we make it easier on our end, it's fairly simple for us to do and potentially help move the barometer on that. So I'm hopeful that we can get this passed, but I wouldn't mind throwing forward an amendment, and if there's an agreement to it, I just fear that potentially the ask is, and Councillor Martin, feel free to chime in if you feel this is friendly, but I think the ask is potentially just too broad or vague. I was wondering if we could look at the 3 specific asks and maybe ask for more actionable report back on them. For example, can we ask staff to maybe spend a little more time in saying how are we leading the way in terms of reducing our own natural gas consumption? 2 would be incentivize or require reductions in natural gas consumption for new construction. Can we look a little bit deeper specifically at that and say, are we working with developers to try and find ways to potentially offer them savings? And if that's reduction in, say, development charges or other things, to potentially look at more green or net zero style building. And then also, can we potentially look at providing further education or amplification of some of these programs through our social media and through our website to ensure that people are accessing them? So I would just ask that maybe we be a little bit more specific in the return on the report. And I can provide that over to the clerk if needed. It's just really 3 pieces here, but that would be all.
If you could provide that over to the clerk. I am going to, just for sake of continuity, not allow friendly amendments and have it put forward as a formal amendment. So I would be looking for a seconder on that, seconded by Councillor Dunstall. Any comments or questions on that? Councillor Sadhu.
Thank you, and through the mayor. Yeah, just a general comment. Councillor Wilkinson kind of beat me to it, but I would be in favor of that. I did meet with Bart and the Eco Boosters. They go above and beyond. They're putting in a lot of volunteer hours and a lot for stuff that they're not going to see the results of overnight, but they are looking into the future. So I believe it is incumbent on us and staff to give them a more thorough report and a more detailed report that they can take back and kind of work off from there.
In regards to the amendment that's proposed, any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I will call, Councillor Cressman, you would just like to have it read, I'm assuming? Yes. Just one moment there.
Thank you, Mayor Salonen. Through you, the amendment would be to strike out the last paragraph and replace it with that council directs staff to prepare a report within 3 months that outlines options and recommendations for actions the township can take to 1, reduce natural gas consumption within township operations, 2, incentivize or require reductions in natural gas consumption in new construction, including both residential and non-residential development, and 3, support existing homeowners and businesses in reducing natural gas use through education, partnerships, or other mechanisms.
Any other comments or questions on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor? That carries unanimously. So now we have the motion as amended. Any additional comments or questions or amendments? Councillor Martin?
Through you, Mayor Salonen. So in the amendment, we changed it to 3 months. Since this talks about June Committee of the Whole, which would actually just be the beginning of June. So really, we're looking at July. Is that accurate?
I think I would leave that to staff's interpretation, but probably you're along the correct lines, I believe, yes. I do have a few comments of my own that I want to make, and I know I've spoken many times with the Ninth Valley Eco Boosters and Bart's team, and in fact been a part of some of your events, and I think that this is really great information. My concern is that we did just go through a budget where we did not provide staffing of multiple positions, including in fact, actually, the environmental staff person, I don't think, has been back on the budget since our first budget cycle of this council. I'm just concerned that this report is going to require a lot more work and staff time, and add on to, I'm not even certain whose department would be responsible for this right now. I do think that there are other activities that we can do as a council to very much be advocating for these types of changes. I'm just concerned really with the timelines and who would be responsible amongst our staff when, I mean, the planning department is now responsible for a whole new host of responsibilities, and have day-to-day legislative work they have to do. And it's paining me to say this. I'm really just trying to be the realist in this, though. Of realistically, I don't know where we can get staff support of, and I am going to turn over to staff, but I am just addressing my colleagues first about my concerns on this, and then further, if we get the report, what does that implementation look like? And would this almost be better to be suited being wrapped into the next budget cycle, not to push it off, but more so to realistically give staff time to look at this and then have a plan of, if this is what council chooses to do, here are the options that you can then pursue it through costing wise and have it included in the next work plans. But I will call on staff. We will look to Director O'Krafka for his comment.
Through you, Mayor Salonen, I can give you an update on one component of this. Again, this is broad. It hits, I would bet, every department relative to the breadth of what you're looking for. But with respect to working with the industry, there is a Green Development Standards project that is underway, as some of you on council have been in some of the meetings. I think you've all been invited to them. It's all the municipalities in Waterloo region working together with Waterloo Community Energy. It includes public consultation. There's been a number of sessions. It includes staff across all the municipalities and includes the industry as well. And that's a critical piece because the Green Development Standards, obviously, without the buy-in from the industry, will not be successful. But that project itself is probably almost a year away from becoming something that's presented and finalized and endorsement sought by council. So these processes, green development standards, I'm sure there are a lot of people who wish that was going to happen overnight. The reality of 7 municipalities plus the region plus Waterloo Community Energy working together to develop something is that it's not going to happen overnight, but certainly progress has been made. And so from that perspective, I can give you that update now. Again, it's not that I can't report back on that component to you with more details, but certainly it's not something that's going to happen in the next couple of months in terms of completion of that and moving forward. But it is a project which a number of the members of the Valley Eco Boosters have obviously been involved. Mr. Van Andel's been involved in some of the meetings as well. So certainly they're well aware of that effort, and it is ongoing.
Thank you very much, Director Okrafka. I don't know if Acting CAO Clark, you want to chime in on the workload component or not. I will leave that up to you.
Through you, Madam Mayor. When we're looking at, the financing of this and incentives and those types of things, developing a program does take some effort and time. So it's not just finding the funding, but it's also working with, building and planning and determining how we can incentivize it to figure out what the cost is, as well as I think from an internal perspective, my experience in this in the past has been working with our facilities team to identify the opportunities for improvement and then determining how we best fund those and make those a priority, because they are also competing with infrastructure renewal priorities. So, sometimes we can find some synergies where we look at an opportunity to enhance a facility because of age as well as performance. So I think there is an opportunity to do that, but there is a significant amount of effort, and we have one person who does asset management within finance, so this would sort of fit into that role, but it adds another component on top of that. But I definitely think it's something that we can keep top of mind. I don't know how significant we can push the envelope on this, given limited resources to support both the internal and the external financing of these things.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkinson.
Through the chair, appreciate the commentary on maybe the level of depth that staff would like to go on this, but I think reading through what the ask is, it's more of a sort of a high-level review and then a report back on suggestions and ways to move forward, right? By no means I think the ask, especially in the amendment, is to develop whole strategies or fund whole strategies, right? I mean, it's saying essentially prepare a report that outlines options and recommendations for actions the township can take, right? And that's the key wording in it. But I think it's key that we undertake this activity because it will be coming. And I think it's important that we're on the cutting edge or the leading edge of it and at least have this top of mind when we're looking at new things. I think it's going to come a time when new developments likely won't have gas in the ground. So, is it worth us looking at it now and saying, are we working with developers to have those conversations? And maybe getting a report back on where staff are or what they're thinking is going to be beneficial and again, help council be informed to make policy recommendations or amendments as we move forward here. So that is my interpretation, at least the spirit of it. I don't think we're asking for development of full programs and strategies and funding of such. It's more so come back and outline options and recommendations.
All right, Councillor Cressman.
Yes, it might be a question for, through you, Mayor, to Director Okrafka. It was my understanding that the provincial government stepped in last year sometime, and the move was on the table to not have natural gas, I guess the cost associated with making natural gas available in subdivisions. I forget who was supposed to pay, but I think the provincial government reversed that decision and is requiring, as my take-home message, let's put it that way, my take-home message was natural gas would be continued to be made available in subdivisions going forward. Is that correct?
Through you, Mayor Sallin, I do recall that I wrote a report to council on that matter. It involved the Ontario Energy Board decision in the province stepping in and basically undoing that decision relative to how gas infrastructure is funded. There's a lot of mixed messages, obviously. The federal government recently canceled the carbon tax, which was supposed to drive people to not use or have to pay extra if they want to use gas, things like that. So there's a lot of moving parts right now. Certainly we can report back at a high level. Again, it does hit all departments, so it's, you know, how do we purchase vehicles? Are we looking at green vehicles? All of those components fit into this plan. And so there's a lot of information that we can summarize for council, certainly. In terms of the timeline, the components that I would see as being development services, I think I can pull together in that time frame. I can't speak for my fellow directors, though, and whether that timeline works for them. So I think that's important to ensure that you get a report that actually has what it is you're looking for, rather than rushing through and saying, yeah, well, we haven't got there, we haven't got this. So I would throw that out there. But again, the Green Development Standards piece, we've been pretty actively involved in, so I can give you an update as to where that is and where that part's going for sure. And yeah, so I can circulate that report that came last year. I think it was June, possibly on natural gas. And we do measure that consumption. We can provide those numbers. We have we included it in that report. 2024, we've made the request for the Enbridge data. Again, they reasonably probably don't send that probably till June, I would think. We got a thank you saying, yes, you're in the queue. However, the information is not available. We'll let you know when it is. So whether we have that in time, we'll include it if we do.
Any other questions or comments, councillors? Okay, seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. And on to our final motion of this evening, which is also Councillor Martin's motion, and this is regarding the Code of Conduct review. I will turn it over to Councillor Martin to introduce.
Thank you, Mayor Sallin. I've already made a statement summarizing my reason for putting this forward. And so whereas the subsection 223.2 bracket 1 of the Municipal Act 2001 requires every municipality to establish codes of conduct that apply to members of council and local boards, and whereas the Township of Wilmot Code of Conduct for elected officials came into force and effect on November 19, 2007, and whereas the Code of Conduct helps to ensure that the members of council share a common basis for acceptable conduct, and whereas there's been a significant amount of time since the review of the Township's Code of Conduct for elected officials, therefore be it resolved that council directs staff to work with our Integrity Commissioner to review and propose amendments to the Code of Conduct for elected officials by the fall of 2025. So I move that.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Is there a seconder for this? Seconded by Councillor Dunstall, and I will open it up to questions or comments. Councillor Cressman.
Through you, Mayor, to our acting CAO, how frequently are these normally reviewed in your experience?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll actually defer to our clerk, Caitlin.
Thank you, Acting CAO. Through you, Mayor Sallin, and to Councillor Cressman. In my history, we review them every term of council as a midterm governance review, and often at the end of council as well. So once you've kind of got into the swing of things, you review it to see if it's aligning with the governance and business of the township, and then normally near the end of the council before the next term of council gets it.
Any other questions or comments, councillors? Councillor Wilkinson.
Through the chair, so on that note, when was the last time it was reviewed?
2007. I do just have a comment, and this is kind of going back to costing and staff resourcing. Right now, there's currently bill, I believe it's 241, which the province of Ontario is still planning on continuing forward even post-election, where they are currently reviewing and looking to standardize all codes of conduct across the whole province. AMO, which I'm on the board of, is actively involved in continuing those conversations with the province of what that looks like. And the province does currently have a draft format, essentially, of what that code of conduct, unless they make huge alterations to, is going to look like. That is looking to come into effect in the next year, is my understanding, but again, we're relying on the province here. All of that being said, I don't personally know if it's the best use of our funds to be hiring the Integrity Commissioner to do a review right now when we are anticipating that this is going to be changed by the province and standardized. I don't disagree that our code of conduct absolutely has room for improvement. But again, I'm thinking from a resource perspective, I don't know that it's the best use. And in fact, I believe that probably the Integrity Commissioner would look at the work that's already done by the province and probably rely heavily on that anyways. I would kind of rather look to see if it looks like the province is going to continue with this and actually follow their timelines, that we make the updates when the province standardizes it. And if it's looking like they decide to draw back, then perhaps we add this to the work plan for 2026. That's just where I personally sit on it. But I do certainly appreciate, Councillor Martin, you acknowledging and bringing forward that we need to make updates. Like I said, I don't disagree that there's great room for improvement. Just also looking at the reality of our financial situation and resourcing, that's personally where I stand on the matter. But Councillor Cressman.
Yes, through you, Mayor. Again, I hate reinventing the wheel if the wheel is being in the process of being reinvented. And as such, I would think somehow we could have a deferral motion. I know what a deferral motion is and debate on it, but that would be contingent on the time when it was clear what the province's intentions were on bringing forward what, legislation or a model code of conduct? Is that the proper wording?
I will let the clerk decide on what that wording would look like, but I see Councillor Martin, you have a comment.
Through you, Mayor Salonen, and thank you for your comments. Mayor Salonen, you're absolutely right that the province is working on this code, and I was aware of that. The reason I put this motion forward now is thinking of the cost of filing complaints, the cost of what we look like to our constituents in the township, the cost of how we've struggled because we have different opinions on what our code of conduct means. And so in my mind, it's costly for us not to make some changes.
Fair enough. Clerk Boss, do you have suggestions to inhibit the wording of that timeline?
Thank you, Mayor Salonen. The wording I have is that council postpones the consideration of this motion until, I'm going to need some direction on timing.
Councillor Cressman.
Yes. Through you, Mayor, I was of the impression until the province makes their intentions clear, but that may be waiting for Godot.
Perhaps a suggestion, because I could see that perhaps being a bit too vague of a precedence to start, especially knowing this provincial government, but perhaps that we relook at this come the fall. There might be movement in the fall if it's clear, if at that time a more appropriate time to defer. Like, I think that would give this council a decision not to completely dispose of this item, but
Okay.
I'll throw that suggestion in your court.
Defer to, are we talking classical fall, like September isn't fall, but I'll defer till September committee of the whole.
Okay, so there is a motion to defer to September on this decision. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Sadhu. So it would just be time and place that we would be talking about at this point. Any questions or comments on that? Okay, Seeing none, all those in favor, all those opposed, and that carries. And on to announcements. Unfortunately, our gallery has trickled down, but thank you to those who have continued to make it to this length in our meeting. So March is National Social Workers Month, and I want to thank all of the dedicated social workers who support Wilmot residents through an array of life situations and circumstances. Your work matters, and we appreciate you. March is also Fraud Prevention Month. Waterloo Regional Police Services has reported that scams targeting older adults are increasingly prevalent. Police are reminding the public to be cautious about unsolicited phone calls, emails, and text messages, and say banks will not send a courier to pick up credit or debit cards. Let's Tree Wilmot is celebrating their 5th anniversary, which happened earlier this month. And Let's Tree Wilmot is a volunteer-run, non-for-profit, and a project of the Wilmot Horticultural Society. Community-focused, Let's Tree Wilmot's goals are to plant and protect trees in Wilmot Township, and through partnerships and cooperations, native species have been planted by volunteers in public spaces and on private lands, including many municipal lands. Let's Tree Wilmot's actively engages the public in forest stewardship through planting, education, and training, and has accomplished so much in their first 5 years. And congratulations to your organization on your 5-year anniversary, and you can visit letstreewilmot.ca to learn about spring planting that's coming up. Earth Hour is taking place on Saturday, March 29th, and this community event encourages residents to turn off non-essential lights for 1 hour to promote energy conservation. I will just note, but I know Councillor Cressman's going to comment on it, Heritage Wilmot does have a new Heritage Day, but I will let Councillor Cressman do that in a moment. Mother's Day is happening at Castle Kilbride on Sunday, May 11th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and children of all ages are invited to treat their mom to a 30-minute guided tour of the castle by a costume staff person. The tour includes the handcrafted history and in bloom exhibits, and there are special rates if booked in advance at $8 per adult and $5 per child, or $22 for a family of up to 5, and regular rates at the door. We also have some more ghost walks at Castle Kilbride that are back this season, and this is in partnership with Ghost Walks. You can tour with costume guides as they present an Out of Ordinary tour, and upcoming dates include April 12th, May 10th, June 7th, and June 21st. For tickets, please go to ghostwalks.com and click on Castle Kilbride. And they do sell out really fast. I'm still trying to get tickets myself, so be sure, if you are interested in that, to go and check that out as soon as possible. Lastly, I want to wish the New Hamburg Firebirds all the best of luck in their current series that they're playing against the Wellesley Applejacks, and this is for the division finals. The series is currently tied at 1-1, with the next game being tomorrow, and I now have a new vested interest as Mayor Nowak has challenged me to a friendly bet that the mayor's team who does not come out on top will have to wear the winning team's jersey to the next council meeting. So, Firebirds, I already want you to succeed and be division champions again, but I really, really don't want to wear an Applejacks jersey to council. So please, if that gives you extra incentive, win. And to everyone who supports the Firebirds, be sure to continue to check out the games and go Firebirds. I will now turn it over to Councillor Cressman.
Yes, this isn't Groundhog Day repeated, because I keep talking about the Heritage Day. As you know, it was canceled because of a snowstorm the last time. It is now rescheduled for April the 26th from 10 till 2 at the New Dundee Community Centre. You can purchase food. This time it's going to be provided by the Wilmot Optimists, and so the two items that are being celebrated are celebrating Wilmot's families, and as well the 175 years of Wilmot Township since it was incorporated. So fortunately or unfortunately, Nancy and I developed a nice little poster that showed some of the reeves of Wilmot Township. that I was related to over the years, and so good or bad, and a little 30 slide deck show that goes on loop. So we were a little disappointed it didn't happen originally, but it can understand with the snow. So looking forward to the 28th.
Thank you. Councillor Dunstall.
Yeah, I did want to make an announcement. I did want to recognize our own very Councillor Stuart Cressman, who is being honored tomorrow at the Ontario Pork Association, and I don't want to get this mixed up. I want to say for a lifetime achievement, but I'm not. What is exactly the name of the award that you are receiving?
It is lifetime achievement. I don't know, acting like a pig wouldn't be the right title, but my involvement with pork research, both provincially and nationally, and then as well being part of the ARIO, Agricultural Research Institute of Ontario, using provincial money and producers' money in the building of research stations for the University of Guelph. So I had the privilege of working with some great people. The timing was there, and the foundation was there, so it wasn't a lot of what I did. It was the contributions of this.
Well, they seem to differ with you, but congratulations.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you. I just have a couple of announcements. I was going to mention the Firebirds, but what I'll say is I'll look forward to Mayor Novak wearing the Firebird shirt. I wanted to mention that I was at Wilfrid Laurier University on Friday, and our mayor was part of a panel on women in politics, and I had the pleasure of being a part of that presentation, so thank you for doing that. And my third announcement is about Canada Day, which of course is Canada Day, July 1st. We're looking for sponsors and also any vendors, and so on the website, the Township website, you can find details, so to remind you of Canada Day.
Fantastic. Any other announcements, councillors? Okay, seeing none, I will move on to the confirmatory bylaw. I need a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Wilkinson, seconded by Councillor Dunstall. All those in favour? That carries unanimously. And adjournment. Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Cressman. All those in favour? And that carries unanimously. Have a great evening, everyone.